Welcome to yet another banger video on my complete mess of a channel. Today we are going to be doing another episode of throw the random anime character against Dragon Ball and hope to god they survive. In today's episode we will be looking at a character that has been on my list for quite a while now, and she was also recently requested in growing numbers. Today we will be taking a look at how far Altair from Recreators would get if she were to be born in the Dragon Ball universe. As per usual, let's start with a little explanation about who she actually is and what Recreators is even all about. Let's start with diving into a short explanation of Recreators as an anime itself. The best way I can describe Recreators is that it is one of the very few reverse isekai anime shows. During the meeting in which the concept for the show was being discussed, some intern just went, "What if, instead of sending our MC to another world, we bring the people from the other world to our MC?" And the moment he finishes saying this, every executive in that meeting simultaneously creamed their pants and sucked this man off on the spot. There are a few other similar anime to Recreators, but generally speaking it has a pretty unique setting among its peers. The show itself aired back in 2017 and was, to my knowledge, based off the original manga sharing the same name. The character we are going to be talking about today is the main villain of the series. During the plot of Recreators, she brings many fictitious characters created by the real people in the world of Recreators to life and transfers them to the real world to achieve her goals. She has a pretty big repertoire of powers she can use, but there are some caveats with the way that she works that might hinder her in the setting of today's video, but we will just get to that in due time. Let's first start off with taking a look at what Altair can bring to the table. During her screen time in the show, she has been shown to have quite a few passive abilities that are quite honestly pretty ridiculous. For starters, she possesses the ability of precognition. She can see far into the future and plan her actions accordingly. It is near impossible for her to be betrayed or caught off guard because she honestly just most likely already knew that it would happen and has already planned around it. She also has the ability to find the exits in infinite spaces. This one sounds pretty vague, I know, but in the show she was caught in an infinite prison and she was able to look beyond the infinity of the prison and find the only exit. Going by this logic, she would probably be able to get past Gojo's infinity or similar techniques using the same methods. She also has a unique variation of immortality. In order to explain how her immortality works, I will have to explain a bit more about how Recreators in itself actually works. In the world of Recreators, there exist creators and creations. The creators are just regular mangaka or light novel authors, and the creations are their fictitious creations in the world of Recreators. Altair brought those fictitious creations into the real world and yada yada yada. Basically, every single creation has a singular creator, and with that come the weaknesses that were written into their designs. Altair does not really have a singular creator. She is a collective concept among net dwellers who kept adding onto her design. As long as even a single person keeps creating parts of her design, she will never truly be able to die. Another important factor is that normally a creator can't just buff their creation willy-nilly. A creator can write additional powers for their creations, sure, but those powers will only become reality if the majority of the audience of said creation accepts them as being viable. If the audience perceives these new powers as total ass pulls, the powers won't manifest for the creation to use, so they will basically be completely useless. Altair does not have this weakness, or at least not to such a high degree as the regular creations do. Since she is a collective existence of hundreds if not thousands of creators, her powers can pretty much grow infinitely with little to no walls to hold them back. She is effectively a fanfiction loosely based on another fictitious character in the Recreators universe, making her essentially damn near omnipotent in her own universe. To add on to her version of immortality, she is also immune to abilities that change the timeline or change the cause and effect of things. Due to being an independent existence without a singular creator, she can't be affected by these types of abilities. This does also mean that she can't receive powers from others who want to change her abilities through abilities that would change cause and effect or change the timeline. So it does kind of nerf her in a way, but not really at the same time. The biggest part of this is just her immunity to these abilities. It really outweighs the small demerits that she can't receive powers through them. And lastly, for her passive abilities, we have her capability to regenerate from basically anything. She was even able to regenerate her body after being erased on a conceptual level by Sirius, which was specifically crafted to bypass her own immortality. But she just said, haha, no, know and just came back anyway. But aside from these passive abilities, Altair also has several active abilities which she can just use on demand. These abilities are all covered under the umbrella of her Holopsicon, which I probably just completely butchered the pronunciation of, but you know, you get what I mean. The Holopsicon is a mysterious ability that lets her break free from the plot of any story she desires. This is also how she transferred the fictitious characters from various shows into the real world. This ability is said to be completely omnipotent in the recreated universe and cannot be destroyed, copied, stolen, nullified, or even tampered with. The abilities she uses during combat are called the movements of the cosmos. During the show she uses a total of 7 of these abilities, but it is unknown if she possesses more of them that she just hasn't used. I will just go over the 7 entries we have knowledge of for this part of the video. Starting off, we have the third movement, Representation Exposition. This movement allows her to alter an aspect of a story to suit her own needs. For example, she could just change Trunks' sword into a flower so she doesn't get cut by it. Next is the 9th movement, Fate Restoration. This movement allows her to erase aspects of a story. So for example, she could erase the ability for Saiyans to go Great Ape and many more shenanigans. Next up is the 13th movement, Outline Origin. This allows her to completely reset a story to its original setting. So for example, if Goku were to somehow go Super Saiyan during this fight against Vegeta for whatever reason, Altair could reset the story to its normal parameters. So basically, she just makes it so Goku couldn't go Super Saiyan at that moment in time because it wasn't a part of the original story. Next up is the 14th movement, the Vicissitude of Fortune. This ability allows her to revert the causality of cause and effect for any attack aimed at her. So if Goku fires a Kamehameha at her, he would get hit instead, and if Frieza pierced her heart with a death beam, Frieza would be the one who dies instead. Next up is the 20th movement, Factor Mimic. This movement allows her to copy and recreate aspects of a story. So for example, if she were fighting Goku during the Raditz fight, she could create another 10 copies of Raditz to fight Goku alongside her. Next up is the 23rd movement, Fate Reconstruction. This movement gives Altair whatever power she needs to revise the fate she encounters. An example of this is her obtaining the power to stop time to prevent a train hitting a certain character, essentially saving them from their fate. And lastly, we have the 66th movement, Existence Change. Although this ability is not shown to be used by Altair herself, but rather her copy Sirius, it is still very likely that she also possesses it. This movement allows her to absorb her enemies on a conceptual level, essentially just completely erasing them from existence, just completely. Now, aside from these abilities, Altair also uses summonable swords and a Tommy gun during battle, but even though these items are not really special, she does have access to them, so I thought I would mention them nonetheless. So those were all the powers and abilities Altair has shown during the story of Recreators. If you are anything like me, you're also just currently thinking that she is one of the most broken characters ever written, just period. And in my unprofessional opinion, you would be completely right. But there is a small caveat. Depending on how you interpret her powers, she is either completely unbeatable or actually pretty weak. Allow me to explain. Most, if not all of her powers are completely busted in her own universe, and the keywords here being her own universe. The way I do these videos is that I assume that these characters would be native to the world of Dragon Ball. Somehow, someplace, somewhere, she just would be born into the world of Dragon Ball. So you can really go one of 2 ways of interpreting how she would do in this scenario. Version 1 is where we assume that her powers are fully live and she counts Dragon Ball as another piece of fiction which she can freely manipulate using her abilities. Or version 2, where Dragon Ball is considered as non-fiction to her worldview. This version would severely nerf her. While she would still have all of her abilities, because we will just assume she was born through the creators that create stories inside the world of Dragon Ball, her abilities would not affect the characters of Dragon Ball due to them being non-fiction. She would be nearly completely reliant on the fictitious characters created within the world of Dragon Ball. And since we do not know a whole lot about what stories actually exist within the world of Dragon Ball, we would have to essentially speculate nearly every combat encounter she would get in because we just don't really know. Both of these versions would result in a completely different placement. Personally, I am a way bigger fan of version 1 due to it just straight up being more fun in my opinion. Like, my main purpose for doing these types of videos is to just have a good time after all. But I can't just disregard the possibility of version 2 being a viable way to look at this scenario. So how will this affect the ranking of Altair? If we go by version 1, there is no one in the entire Dragon Ball verse that could stand up to her, just period. Like, nobody, in my opinion at least, would be able to do anything. Her powers allow her to become the actual author of Dragon Ball. Like, for all intents and purposes, she would become Toriyama. She she can alter the story to whatever would please her the most. She could make all the people with a power level over 1 reset to a power level of 1. She could make all gag characters lose their unique gag power. She could erase Ki from the story. She can remove unique race-based abilities, etc. No one from Goku all the way to Zeno could realistically do anything to her whatsoever. She would be the omnipotent god above even Zeno if we go by version 1 of this theory. And in light of those feats, I would rank her in the question mark tier where she could defeat all of Dragon Ball. Now, if we go by version 2, the result drastically changes. Honestly, I feel like I lack a huge part of the information I need to properly rank her for this version of events. Depending on how powerful the fictitious characters in Dragon Ball are, she could rank anywhere from the Saiyan Saga to the Tournament of Power. Like, we just simply don't know enough to be able to properly place her if we go by this version. But like I stated before, I prefer version 1 anyway, so I will be placing her in the question mark tier as one of the most broken characters I have ever encountered in fiction in general. But I am very curious as to where you guys would rank her. Do you agree with my take, or do you think the version 2 of events is more likely? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for taking the time out of your busy days to watch my videos. It really does mean a whole lot to me. If you liked today's video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe and leave a comment with your thoughts to help promote the channel. Work hard, study well and eat and sleep plenty, and I will see you all again in the next video. Peace out.